Hello everybody and welcome back to LRN, where today we are taking an in-depth look at Daniel Ricciardo's comments from the last few days, what he's been saying, what the implications are, what we think about it, because he's come out with some sort of strange comments, especially around Lando Norris. He's been full of praise for him, absolutely. But in terms of his view of how that reflects on him, very, very interesting comments there from Danny Rick. And also around the fact that he, of course, is still aiming to come back in 2024 because he feels there are going to be better options available that year. So we're going to look at 2024, we're going to look at those options and what might be available to him and who might take a punt on Danny Ricciardo in 2024, because I've been looking at it and I'm really struggling to see where this good opportunity is coming from. But we're going to get into that in more detail as we go through the video. First of all, though, if you are new around here, please make sure to subscribe on the bottom right hand side, and all of you, please make sure to like and comment on the video. It really helps build the community and the channel, so really appreciate all of your support. But anyway, then let's get into it. So Daniel Ricciardo over the last few days coming out with loads of comments, and we'll kick off then with what he said around Lando Norris. So in terms of Lando, he said, if I'm going to give you a short answer, I'll put it down to two things. So that's on the question of why Norris has been able to perform in the McLaren when he's struggled so much. He said, one, I'll never take credit away from him. The kid's good. There's no denying that. And if I say he's not, I'm just being a bitter, sore loser. The kid's good. That's obviously one element. He can steer. The second is ignorance is bliss. And I'm not saying he's got no knowledge of race cars, not at all. I think he's quite actually in tune with what he does from a technical point of view. But it's the only F1 car he's driven. Obviously, there have been variations of the McLaren, but he hasn't driven for another team. So in a way, he has got, I'm sure, used to some of the elements of this car. There's probably a bit of that where I've obviously got some, I hate this word, but I've just got to use it for a lack of better words right now, expectation of maybe what a Formula One car can do or should do, or where some potential lies. He does now because he watches onboards and he sees what other drivers can do. Yeah, I wish we could do that. The rear doesn't do what I want. But ultimately, he hasn't been behind the wheel of another car, so obviously he's good, and there's an element of ignorance is bliss. So this is a really long, roundabout way of Ricciardo saying that he's bad in the McLaren because he had a good Red Bull all those years ago. That is how I'm reading it. It seems to me clear that what he's basically saying is I'm used to a car that can perform to a certain level, and now that I'm driving a car that can't, it's massively impacting my performance. And I have to say, I don't think, as of someone, if Ricciardo was retiring from F1 and he was completely giving up on coming back, then yeah, okay, make these comments, say whatever you want, doesn't matter what it is. But if he is someone who wants to come back in 2024, and as I say, we'll get to those opportunities and who it might be that will take a punt on Danny Rick, but if he wants to come back in 2024 and you are those team owners looking at these comments from Danny Rick saying basically, if you don't give me the best car on the grid, or at least close to the best car on the grid, I'm going to struggle because I'm just so used to being in such good machinery. Are you going to want that? Or are you going to want someone who can come in and adapt to whatever you give them? And I would chuck out an Alonso as an example of that. You know, no matter what you give him, yes, okay, it might have taken a few races. I think actually the 22 cars, it took Alonso some time at the beginning of the season to get used to it. But now, once again, he's adapted and he's showing why he's Fernando Alonso, right? I don't think Danny Rick's done that. I think I did see glimpses of how good he could be when he was at the back end of his time with Renault. I think he really did step up his game a bit there, and we saw him get used to that car. But with McLaren, it just hasn't happened. And to come out with these comments to make him look essentially like a really niche driver, someone that can only succeed in really specific machinery that does exactly what he wants it to do. He can't adapt, he can't overcome, he has to have it spot on how he likes it or he will struggle. I think if you're a team owner looking at who you're going to bring in, you're looking at those comments and you're going, well, you know, I was interested, but actually, what are the chances that our car are going to be perfect to what Daniel Ricciardo needs? And the answer is probably going to be Let's go with maybe an up-and-coming talent who, Ricciardo's basically said that young drivers who don't know anything else will be better at adapting than me. So why wouldn't they just go and get a younger driver, like McLaren have done with Piastri, who's going to come in and drive the car better than he can? I really don't think he's putting himself in a good light here. I mean, I can see what he's trying to say, and I can see that he's basically just trying to explain why it is that Norris has been so much quicker, and he's trying to basically alleviate some of the blame from himself, and I'd say that he understands. And I think this comes again down to why he's now come and said, I need a break from the sport. So if we move on then, away from what he said about Norris, he has said that actually a break from the sport is what he needs. Zak Brown has come out and said that he has rejected moves to Haas and Williams. So I have to suspect either he genuinely felt that I'm not ready for Formula One next year. I do need a break. The more I've thought about it, I need a break. Or maybe as well as that, he's gone, I'm not willing to drop down to a level of Haas and Williams. He wants better drives, which is something he's mentioned as well. So he's going to reject those, take a year out, come back into a better team, or a team with better prospects than that of Haas and that of Williams. So we'll get into the lack of options. So he has said he needs a break. He has said he needs a reset. And this is his comments around that. So he said, it's something I've certainly evaluated since the summer break. I've wanted to give it a few races, and the more time that passes, the more I feel like it's what I need, albeit as well the opportunities. There's not really anything in the form of next year. So that, mixed with Zak Brown's comments around Williams and Haas, him rejecting them, suggests that he doesn't see them as a viable opportunity to go to those two teams lower down the grid. He's not interested in that. It's part I would like the break and need to reset a little bit, and part 2024 as well, some other things may open up, and again we'll get into those teams specifically in a minute. I think that there could be some better opportunities in 2024, so that's really what all this confirms, and now where the sights are set. Certainly the plan is to still be involved in F1. It's kind of like just hitting the pause for a little bit as I see it, and let's say as far as my F1 career goes, the full intention is to be driving for 2024. So there we have it then. As we've said, full intention to be back on the grid in 2024. My worry for Ricciardo is I don't see how, in terms of if he's rejecting teams like Haas and Williams, who would be good opportunities for him to come back, where do those other opportunities come then? So let's get into that then. Let's go through the teams and let's see where are those opportunities going to come in 2024. Do we think there is any way that he can fit himself into the grid in a car that he'd be interested in driving? So we'll go through the teams. We'll kick off with Ferrari. Of course, I'm sure a team that he would love to drive for. But given that they currently have Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, do I think that he's got any chance of getting into the Ferrari team? Absolutely not. I do not see him usurping either of those drivers. And even if something happened and they said, and as an example, they went, actually, you know what, Carlos, you're not living up to expectations, we're going to look at someone else. Would they look at Danny Rick, especially taking into consideration the comments he's made? I'd argue no. I don't think he would. Red Bull. Would he go back to Red Bull, considering, he has had success in the past, but the reason he left in the first place is because he knew how much they favoured Max Verstappen. He had no interest in staying at Red Bull and playing second fiddle to Max. Will that have changed now? Absolutely not. He won't have any interest in going back there. Despite a few comments in the media recently, I don't think Max will be leaving Red Bull anytime soon, if ever. So do I see Danny Rick going back to Red Bull? No. No chance. Again, if you disagree with any of this, let me know in the comments below. I do want to know where you think he's going to end up, if you think he's going to end up back on the grid in 2024. Mercedes then, Hamilton and Russell. Hamilton has just basically said, I want to stick around for another 5 years. He wants his title back. Russell's definitely going nowhere. The team love him. At the moment, it looks like an exciting partnership. And yes, Hamilton would have been one of the ones where we've had rumours about the possibility of Hamilton leaving, but that doesn't seem to be coming to fruition. It seems that the longer the time goes on, the more we see that Hamilton's actually going to be staying in the sport for a few years to come. So again, another opportunity there that Ricciardo won't have, but we will come back to Mercedes at the end. McLaren, He's not going to go back to McLaren. Of course, they've just got rid of him. He can't get on with the car. They've not managed to produce one that he likes, so he's not going to be going back there. They've obviously taken Ricciardo's advice and gone for a younger driver who doesn't understand or hasn't driven other cars in Piastri. So hopefully that works better for McLaren than what they've had with Ricciardo. But certainly no way back to McLaren for Ricciardo in 2024. Alpine would have been interesting had they not just spent a fortune getting Gasly out of AlphaTauri, and I do not think they're going to break up that all-French partnership already after just one season. Even if things went a bit awry, I suspect it would stay as Gasly and Ocon. I can't see either of those drivers leaving Alpine after 2023, so that completely closes the door on a return to the Alpine/Renault outfit, of course, that he was with before. Aston Martin, Alonso only just signed, multi-year deal. Is he going to leave? Would Ricciardo be better than Alonso? I'm going to say absolutely not. There's absolutely zero evidence to say Ricciardo could come into that team and outperform Alonso. Of course, we haven't seen Alonso in the Aston Martin yet. He's still at Alpine, but we know how good Alonso is, and assuming that he doesn't suddenly fall off a cliff in terms of his performance levels, I don't think they're going to break his contract early. I don't think Alonso would let them because he would kick up a huge fuss, but even if they just paid it off, would they be looking at Daniel Ricciardo? Probably, well, maybe, but I just don't see it. I don't see Alonso going anywhere, and we all know why Stroll's not going anywhere. So is Aston Martin an option? No. AlphaTauri, would he go back? Would he? I mean, we've already said he wouldn't go back to Red Bull because he doesn't want to play second fiddle to Max. So would he want to go back to the B team and lead the B team of Red Bull and go right back to feeling like he would at the very start of his career? No, I think I'd put that in the Haas and Williams bracket of I can't win at these teams. These teams aren't ever going to give me an opportunity. That might be harsh on, obviously, I know how much success Williams have had in the past, but we know in recent history they haven't looked like returning to those glory days. So for now, at least, I would bracket Haas Williams with AlphaTauri and say he wouldn't want a drive where he can guarantee that he can't win, at least for the foreseeable, and he's not getting any younger, so I can't see him making that jump. Which only leaves, because again, Haas, Williams, he's not interested. They're too low down the grid. So if we just push them aside, it leaves Alfa Romeo as his option. And that at the moment is Bottas, who I think's done an absolutely phenomenal job for Alfa Romeo, and Zhou Guanyu, who they've just re-signed for this year, who I think is showing promise. I think is actually a good up-and-coming driver. Hasn't performed any worse than Daniel Ricciardo this season. I think, if anything, he might perform a little bit better given the machinery that Zhou Guanyu's got. He does look a good prospect. Of course, Bottas has massively outperformed him, and if they wanted this really stable outfit with two really experienced drivers to sort of build up that brand, then maybe Alfa Romeo is the way to go. But do I see it happening? No, I don't. So I'm really struggling to believe that he will be back on the grid in Formula 1 in 2024. I just cannot find that spot to put him in. I'm not saying he's a bad driver by any stretch of the imagination. I love Daniel Ricciardo. I have done for years. But I think we can all see he's past his best. Or if you're listening to Danny Ricci's comments himself, it's not that he's past his best. It's just that he has such a specific set of requirements when it comes to a car that he's going to perform in that it's that car just might not exist, especially since, he hasn't had that with the new regulations. He hasn't had a car. Maybe there can't be a car with the new regs that drives the way that he wants it to drive. Though, of course, he says that he sees Norris doing things in the car and he just doesn't understand why he can't do them. Maybe he's just not going to get to grips with these cars with these new regulations. That could be an argument as well. But this is where we come back to Mercedes. So I said earlier we'd come back to Mercedes, and we back to these rumours that Ricciardo might join Mercedes as a reserve driver. Now, it was rumoured for next season that would happen, that he'd be doing it for 2023, but obviously he's taken the option to step away. But I think that option as a reserve driver for Mercedes, stepping in, of course, for Hamilton or for Russell, should they be off ill, or anything should happen, with maybe his view of get into the Mercedes outfit, be in and around that team when maybe Hamilton does make a decision, just basically praying that Hamilton doesn't stick around for too long, and then at least he's got those relationships with Mercedes. Maybe they see what he does in the simulator. Maybe he starts building his confidence that way, and then building up his pace, and then maybe gets an opportunity a couple years down the line to come back into F1. But for me, for 2024, unless something crazy happens, I don't see him getting a drive on the grid. Assuming that in 2024, when he realizes there isn't a drive, he doesn't go, actually, you know what, I just need to be an F1. Give me the Williams drive. Give me the Haas drive. I'll take them. Just let me back in. Unless he does that, I can't see where he comes back into Formula One. As I say, Alfa Romeo is a distinct maybe. If Zhou Guanyu has a bad season and they go, actually, you know what, we've given you a chance, it's time, and no one else takes a punt on him, maybe you could get a Daniel Ricciardo into Alfa Romeo, but I think you're clutching at straws there, really. I don't genuinely see that happening. I think either he drops his expectations and he goes, actually, I've been away for a year. I love the sport. I just want to be in Formula One. I don't care anymore if I'm winning. I just want to be around the sport. Maybe actually I've changed my aspirations. I don't mind going from I want to win, I want to be champion, to I want to help a up-and-coming team develop and turn into a midfield team, and later on maybe a championship challenging team like a Haas or Williams, and help them build those blocks to become a successful team in the future. Maybe he can learn to look forward to that challenge in that year that he takes away from the sport, and I think he needs to. Because looking at it, I don't see where the opportunities are for Danny Ric in 2024. But as I said, let me know in the comments below. Do you think he's going to get a drive in 2024? Do you think he should get a drive in 2024? And if so, what team do you want to see Danny Ric at? And what team do you think would even take a punt on Danny Ric? Has he, as I said earlier, kind of dug his own grave a little bit by making those comments, by making it clear he can only drive specific cars that act a specific way? You know, I go back to Jenson Button's comments on Hamilton and why Hamilton was such a good, always so good compared to Jenson, why Jenson struggled, because he found Hamilton could adapt to anything, any conditions, any car, any changes. Hamilton was so good at adapting to anything you put in front of him, and that's what Jenson felt made Hamilton an impossible teammate to beat, because of how good and how quickly he could adapt to different scenarios. Whereas Ricciardo's coming out and saying, I can't do that, I'm not capable of that. And I do think that pushes him down the order in terms of drivers to look at. I think he's basically said younger drivers are better prospects than me, because they will just adapt, because they don't know any different. And I think he shot himself in the foot. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think we'll see Danny Ricciardo back on the F1 grid after this season? Let me know. Otherwise, just going to thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day. Goodbye.